freedom, freedom over fame, freedom over cycle stays the same.
Welcome. First of all, welcome. This is Unsolicited Perspectives, and I'm your host, Bruce Anthony. Thank you for listening and watching wherever you get your podcasts and video podcasts. Subscribe, share, like, comment, and rate us. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at unsolicited_perspectives. You can find us on Twitter and TikTok at unsolicited_PER. Watch us live. Now, watch us live every Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and YouTube. Our audience continues to grow with each and every episode, and I humbly thank you.
On today's episode, I'll be interviewing Sue Humphrey. She's an author, an Olympic coach, and whether she realizes it or not, a women's rights activist. But first things first. So as I said, I'm going to be interviewing Sue Humphrey. She's the author of I Want to Run, the Olympic Development, Training, and Nutritional Guide for Young and Teen Track Runners ages 10 to 18. You can get that on Amazon.com. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to put that link down in the description. She's also been an Olympic coach. She's worked with Will Chamberlain, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, FloJo. She's started track and field at universities. She was an athlete before Title IX and a coach at the beginning and throughout Title IX. What she has to say about the history of women's sports is going to be fascinating. And I am looking forward to learning a lot about her life. And I feel like when you hear about her life from athlete to coach and everything in between, you're going to be really fascinated at the life that she's lived. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road and get started with this interview. Welcome. I'm here with Sue Humphrey. She's an Olympic coach, an author, and I'm going to say a woman's advocate. Sue, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate this.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really have been looking forward to this.
Oh, I'm glad you were looking forward to it because I was as well. Let's get started. You wrote a book and is I Want to Run, the Olympic Development, Training, and Nutritional Guide for Young and Teen Track Runners ages 10 to 8. What is your hope that the readers will take away from it? And what made you write this book?
Okay, well, it's for 10 to 18. In other words, youngsters in middle school, high school, first wanting to get started. And so what I did is I put together kind of a beginner's guide, if you will. And so it's for parents, it's written for a middle school audience as to the different events in track and field, the history of track and field a little bit. Also what I consider the off the track activities as far as nutrition, sleep. If you want to get a college scholarship, what are some of the academic requirements that you're going to need to look at? So it's kind of a cross section beginning novel, a beginning guide, if you will, for someone that wants to get involved in track and field.
Wow. So that's so it's a prep book.
Correct.
Yes, it's a prep. So
it's
I remember back.
Deep, it's not real heavy, but I do give sample workouts and ideas for coaches or for the kids who want to get started.
So what made you write this book?
I guess I have a feeling my paying job over the years has been as a middle school teacher or administrator. Mm-hmm. And so I've always worked with kids, and I've always wanted to be sure that they're set and have a prepared life ready for whatever route they choose, as a career, and to help youngsters, guide them along the way. And I think that's a big thing nowadays is our youngsters are not in all ways getting the best guidance, if you will. And so this was like a beginning novel for them. In other words, a beginning, starting guide, because so many times you look at the track and field books, which are printed, there are not a lot of them. And so this is like, well, how do I get started? And I think, getting a good base and getting a good start is important, obviously. And so I wanted to give them the good framework to get started with.
That's so very, very important. I'll tell you from my own personal experience, I was a basketball player. How good of a basketball player I was is disputed or debated between my friends, me, and my family. But one of the things that in middle school, in preparation for high school, because they could tell in middle school that I was going to be on the varsity, basically my freshman or sophomore year, was that the track and field coach pulled me aside and said, you need to learn how to run and jump properly. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I just run and jump. And he was like, no, there's a technique to running and you're not jumping, right? Some people are 1 foot jumpers. Some people are 2 feet jumpers. And it's like, you're jumping off the wrong leg. So that's interesting because the basis is, if you want to succeed in athletics in high school and beyond, you do need that base.
Right. And, I work with younger kids, meaning middle school, high school kids nowadays. And so many of them, like you say, have no idea how to run, or, I'm surprised they get from point A to point B sometimes with it. And so we break it down and try to get them that good foundation so that the high school coaches can then build on it and the college coaches can build even further. Because many times I'll talk to the college coaches and they're like, oh, we're spending a year or so breaking down all their bad habits.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather the kid go to college without the bad habits or as many bad habits so they can again progress.
So you've worked with middle school kids, but you've also worked for some big names in the Olympics. You've worked with Wilt Chamberlain, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Florence Griffin Joyner. I mean, I have so many questions just from those 3 names, but what was that experience like working with them and being a part of the Olympics?
Well, they were twofold. The working with Wilt and Jackie and FloJo, those all came before the Olympic experience for me.
Okay.
Actually, I met Jackie when she was high school student. We through USA Track and Field, we would host junior elite camps at Colorado Springs, which is where the Olympic Training Center is. And we would bring in elite high school athletes and their high school coaches, again, trying to help them and teach them the right way to do things so that as they advanced, they were ready to go. And so I met Jackie that way. And we got along, and, she's notorious for not liking the high jump, which she will readily admit. And so Bob Kersee, her coach / husband, he saw that we did have a good rapport back and forth. And so he would bring me in at various times of her career or of her season to work with her on high jump, because they would end up always batting heads as to what to do. And Jackie and I didn't bat heads as much. So I was kind of the neutralizer, I guess, with that. Florence, before she became FloJo, was Florence, and she was part of the group. And we were part of Wilt's athletic club. And that's where getting to work and meet Wilt came in, because he sponsored our team. And so what I was working with a high jumper at the time, Colleen Sommer. And so she was one of the world's best high jumpers. And the team was maybe, 10 or 12 of the elite athletes in the U.S. at that time. Most of them were from the UCLA, Bob Kersee group there, but we were kind of the addition to the group and appreciated it. And Wilt would help and be there as a motivator, as a supporter. He traveled with us, so that was a very interesting experience to see him off the track and see how people react to him when he's trying to just walk down the street. That was very eye-opening too.
I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. I watched this documentary. It had to be about a year ago about Andre the Giant, and the looks that he gets, the stares he gets, because he's just this massive, massive man. And I also watched a documentary about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he explained his relationship with Wilt Chamberlain. Both of them tall in stature, Wilt a little bit bigger, and the not confrontations, but how people would approach him. So can you kind of explain a little bit about what that experience was like for Wilt off the track and just everyday life and how people approached him?
Well, I know at meets, he would usually sit down, or like at UCLA, there's a wall between the track and the stands. And we would usually be down at the end by high jump because that's what we were watching at the time. And he would sit against the wall so that unless you really were looking for him around the wall, you wouldn't see him there.
Mm-hmm.
I do know one time somebody came up to him and called him Bill Russell, and he got very upset about that.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
So that person left pretty quickly. I know one time we were in New York, and he was walking down the street just to the hotel, and I came up to about the top of his legs. So I was at his belt buckle, and this guy just kind of started coming up and kind of being a pest and, hey, Wilt, or hey, Mr. Chamberlain, and just kind of harassing him. Mm-hmm. And the guy was not that big. I mean, he maybe was 5'5", 5'4", something like that. And Wilt kept saying, hey, man, leave me alone. Hey, man, get away. And this guy just kept being a pest. And finally, I guess he got the message and left. But, it was very interesting watching people's reaction to him, whether it be, oh, there he is, or even on the airplane, watching the stewardesses. That was quite interesting because they tracked him down. So, they would, he told us, he said, leave the plane last. So we stayed on the plane. It was LA to New York, so it was one of the big planes. And he said, just stay on and then we'll get off at the end. Well, we got off and had to walk through the airport and go to baggage claim and do all of that, Well, these 2 or 3 stewardesses, I remember, were quite eager to find where we were going and to stay with us. So that was pretty obnoxious with it. So I could see where these bigger basketball players and stuff, it's not always their fault that maybe there's rudeness involved or negative reactions, because the public is not always that polite, definitely.
Yeah. Well, when you're in the public eye, you lose your sense of privacy, right. But at the same time, people can be respectful of your privacy.
Right.
So I'm going to detour again. Working with Olympic athletes and then working with middle school kids, it's a dramatic difference in ability. I once coached, and I coached different grade levels, and I found myself, I knew that I wasn't going to be a good coach because I didn't have the patience for people that didn't have a good skill set. I didn't have the patience to teach the basics. I wanted to get to the advanced stuff. How do you do that transition? How do you go from working with Olympic athletes to working with middle school kids? Obviously, you love the kids because you're a teacher and administrator. So I'm sure that love for the kids helps with having that patience.
Yes, definitely. Working with younger kids gives you patience, that's for sure. I think you hit the nail on the head kind of when you said you didn't want to have the beginner athlete that didn't have the skills to begin with. And to me, in my history, I was not a very good athlete physically. I played softball in middle school and high school, and then back then, and get to this with the Title IX, there weren't a lot of opportunities for girls.
Right.
And so I went into the coaching at 15, as to working with kids, obviously younger than me, but, that young as to at least being an organizer. I'm not claiming I knew everything at that time, but I had good people around me. And so because I was not that good of a physical athlete, I had to learn these events from ground zero. I had to learn the very basics. I had to learn, where does your hand go? Where does the leg go? Why does it go there? And I think that has helped me over the years in being able to explain basic techniques to the younger athlete or to the beginning athlete. Now, ironically, working with Olympic level athletes is a little different, but again, every year we kind of go back to the basics at the beginning and refresh and remember, because sometimes we cruise through that a little too fast, and then we need to go back and rebuild that muscle memory or the technical base. Obviously, the Olympic athletes, you would think they're a lot different, but in a way, they're not that different in that they're human beings. They have emotions, certain things bother them. Obviously, things that bother an Olympic athlete are different than bother a 12-year-old. So, you have to work with situations as they arise. But I think just dealing with people is the biggest, and being patient. I mean, I know the patience that I have in working with some of my mid-20-year-olds is far more than working with some of my younger kids at times. So it just really depends on the individual.
Once again, I'm a detour. Do you think that's because of the power dynamic as you're dealing with kids? You're an older adult, so it's easier to have them just follow your lead as opposed to an older person, and they're set in their ways, and they're more complicated because that power dynamic isn't quite there. I'm not talking in the power dynamic as in it's abusive. I'm talking just as far as age and kids being respectful to their elders, at least certain generations.
I was going to say, back in the day, there was a respect for the adult. Nowadays, it's not quite as common initially. It's there once you develop a rapport with the student, but it's not an automatic the way it was 10, 20 years ago. That's definitely different. Again, like you say, though, as they get older, they feel they know everything, as we did when we were that age. And, so sometimes there is, I know this, leave me alone type of idea. And so then you have to, again, that's where patience, step back, wait till they have an issue or fall on their face, and then say, okay, now you're ready to regroup. Let's move ahead now.
I like that. So you brought it up, and I know you've started, as you said, you started your athletic career before Title IX, and you've worked all the way through Title IX. For those people out there that don't understand what Title IX is, can you explain it to them, and can you explain the differences in athletics for women before and after Title IX?
Well, before Title IX, females in high school had play days where we could go and play little group games and things like that on Saturdays. We had no or very limited interscholastic sports. As I remember in high school, we had golf, badminton, and tennis. And if you didn't have one of those sports, which again were more of a higher economic sport, you went to the little play days on Saturdays, and that was it. It was very parks and recreation, play and game type of thing. There was no real structure and no working ahead. There were no high school programs of working with other states and things like that, except for those three sports. There were no college scholarships or anything like that. So to be in athletics, it was more you wanted to be in recreation, I guess, at that time. Then when Title IX came in, of course, it took a 180 because now all of a sudden everybody has to have these programs by law. And it went from 0 to, 100 in a millisecond. And it wasn't always the best transition, very definitely. I mean, there was high school programs that suddenly came in for girls, let's say in track and field. The coaches were not ready for it. The coaches were not that knowledgeable of it. There was a lot of peer pressure put on the students because before that, we had developed, and swimming and track and field pretty much have worked together over the years with this, where we had a club system.
Mhm.
In other words, through the AAU, or now with USA Track and Field or USA Swimming, there's club sports where you can compete against athletes within your own area, your region, state, internationally, and so on, and earn your scholarships that way. Back in the 70s, when the high school programs came in, all of a sudden there was pressure put on these top athletes who had been doing well in the club to suddenly leave the club training and become a high school athlete. Well, the training was night and day difference, and
Right.
the opportunities were totally different. But the peer pressure put on the students was pretty intense by the teachers / coaches at the high schools and by their friends. And so this is what I ran into mostly in Arizona at the time, was having an athlete that we had worked with and developed through our AAU program from maybe age 9 or 10 up to 14 or 15. And she would been doing well, competing nationally, setting records maybe nationally, and doing very well. And all of a sudden, she wants to leave and go to a program that was nothing and hadn't been started, and the coach wasn't that into it. And I'm like, you're giving away any future possibility of a college scholarship, which is now becoming an opportunity, because the training was night and day difference, and swimming was this way too. So we took our top club athletes, and it was very rough there for a while, because it was a battle between the club coach and the high school coach and the club program and the high school programs and so on. So that was a problem when Title IX came in. Obviously, the opportunities provided were above and beyond anything we'd had, because we didn't have any scholarships. And now all of a sudden there are scholarships, there's opportunities available. And of course, the families were all involved with that and excited, and rightly so, because things that the guys just took for granted as far
Right.
as opportunities, now the female counterpart had it too.
So it kind of seems like what you're describing is the reverse, what basketball and AAU for high school kids are now. Whereas a lot of the kids are either the AAU team is their most important team, and their high school team, if it's their local high school that they actually go to and not to a private school, is not as important. So that's interesting. So from what I'm gathering, that first initial wave of females that were participating in athletics when Title IX first started, there may have been some lost talent through that transition.
Very definitely. Or interruption in training. If you have been training on one level and rising up, there was definitely, you put yourself in neutral there for a year or two. If you even then continued, and that was the other thing, as to, again, peer pressure, as we all know, is very powerful. And so depending on the student, depending on her goals, her stability, that became integral part of decision making too. So
what time period, because obviously now when we look at the back end of Title IX, and we have women's soccer, right? The women's soccer team is better than the men's. Like the WNBA is a huge thing now. What was that time period where it all caught up and it was a smoother transition, where there wasn't a loss of talent anymore, that the high schools caught up with the clubs, or maybe the clubs were just phased out and were all integrated into the high schools, and those coaches left the clubs? So what was that time period, and what exactly happened to make it a smoother transition in later years?
Well, I don't even know if we could say it's a smooth transition today, but
Okay.
It is a transition. Well, in the 70s and 80s, it was rocky. because again, the college programs were developing and they were looking for good athletes, and rightly so. And we would look, because then I got involved in the college scene at Arizona State. So now all of a sudden I'm a club coach and now I'm a college coach. So I'm looking for the best talent because I want my program's reputation and results to be good. So I'm not looking at just the high school talent. I'm looking at the club talent too, and bringing athletes in. So that went from the 80s to, let's say 80s and 90s. In the 2000s, then the clubs started to fade away a little bit because the high school program was gaining. The coaches were taking much more seriously the coaching and learning, and coaches' education programs were blooming all over the place. And so the high school coach nowadays, the straight one that wants to be a high school coach, is definitely much stronger and much better trained than they were 20 years ago. Now, there's still some high school coaches who are football coaches that are getting a stipend and the spring, and that's why they're there, but that's a minority, hopefully. So the high school programs that I've been involved with or seeing, for the most part now, are stronger, much stronger on training and education and, doing the right thing, shall we say, and getting your athlete ready for college. And I can't speak for swimming as much, but I think in track, definitely the club programs have faded in some regional areas here way. Like I'm in Texas now, and the club programs are very minimal compared to what I had in Arizona back in the 70s and 80s. So, but I'm still dealing with high school coaches nowadays. In fact, this weekend, is working with, I do private lessons. So I have individual athletes from maybe 10 different high schools. And some of the high school coaches are fantastic and communicate back and forth and are just awesome to work with. And then others, not so much, because now we get into the ego thing. And, like I've told parents, I'm not in it for the ego. I've been there, done that. I want the kid to have a good experience and to be successful. Last year, I had a young lady who had a sprint coach and a jump coach and a strength coach, and I'm like, yeah, she was kind of diversified there. And there was a little issue with the sprint coach and me as to telling her what to do at the meets. And so it got down to where I said to the parent, because apparently the sprint coach was bad-mouthing me to the athlete, and I didn't know that. And then I find out about it later. And so I'm like, hey, Mom, I'm going to step back because I don't want your daughter to be pulled this way. Because if she's pulled this way, the performance is going to matter or be affected. And I'm not there for that. Well, the mom fired the sprint coach and kept me. The athlete was rated #1 in the nation, her event, and made the world team. So, it worked out well. But then I also have stories where it didn't always work out well, and I was left just cheering. So, it depends on the individual, definitely.
So, Sue, you talked about coaching and having issues with other coaches. And I have to ask you a question. What is it like for you in a quote unquote man's world of coaching?
It's a struggle at times and it's wonderful at times. And as I mentioned with the athlete, it's very individual. So likewise with your peer coach, male or female, it's individual. There are some male coaches that are like big brothers to me or fathers and have just been awesome and helped me, mentor me through my career. There's other ones that because I'm a woman, I've been tossed aside. I've been called the most stubborn bee this individual ever heard of or ever dealt with. And that I was called by a college coach. So
Jeez.
it varies, it just varies back and forth. And I just know where my heart is and my passion and my motives, and I have to go with that.
So the reason why I said you're an activist is because you also founded the women's track and field program at Arizona State.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about how that got started? I know you said you were coaching in the clubs, and then you moved towards the college. So I'm going to assume that this was the first college, or had you already been working at other colleges and then you went to Arizona State? How did that all come about?
Okay. Well, I was in Phoenix and I had gone to Arizona State. That's my school and where I graduated and everything else. So I was teaching in Scottsdale, which is a suburb of Phoenix, that whole metropolitan area. And again, Title IX came in 73, 74, and I was very fortunate that one of my parents of one of my athletes I've been working with apparently knew the athletic director at ASU. And I guess they were talking or something, and this father, ironically, the father said, well, call Sue. They were looking for a female, obviously, because all of a sudden now you have to have a female. And so the athletic director called, offered me the assistant track coach, women's track coach. It was part-time. So I had to teach all day, full-time teacher, and then drive over to the university in the afternoon, have practice and so on. And what they did economically, and I understand this, as I look back, that the head women's coach position was tied in with the men's assistant track position. So the assistant men's coach now all of a sudden became the head women's track coach too. So he now suddenly had two titles, one job, or, one position, two different titles. And that way the university had a full-time women's head coach.
Okay.
But he was a male. So I come over as the female in the afternoon. And he was real good, cooperative, a nice guy to work with and so on. But he had some personal issues. And unfortunately, the second year we were into the production of the team there, second year, he had to take a medical leave in October. All of a sudden, he was out of commission. And so the athletic director's like, okay, well, we're not going to bring anybody in mid-year, so it's you. And so luckily I had a very good manager, and between the two of us and figuring everything out, we did, and the team did very well, won conference, and so in the afternoons we would have practice, and then I would have to, after practice, I would have the equipment order, the recruiting, because again, at that time, recruiting for the women was done just by letters and by phone calls. There were no visits, none of the luxuries that we have nowadays for recruiting. You kind of went based on the marks and the rapport you had over the phone. So I had that, and then workouts and everything. So my job basically went, from maybe 4:00 in the afternoon to whenever I was done in the evening, and then go back to school the next morning.
So it went from a part-time job to a full-time job.
Exactly, for $4,000. You're not going to get rich coaching college, but
well, maybe not then.
Now, certain ones, they're making big bucks, but I'll tell you some more as we go on. So that was at ASU. And so again, at the end of that year, which would have been my second year there, obviously now they're going to hire somebody to take this coach's position who had to take the medical leave. Well, the athletic, I interviewed, and I knew that, it's probably a far shot just because I was younger and a female, but I also knew that we had taken the team from basically nothing to third, fourth in the nation And so obviously we had done something right.
So why wouldn't, okay, I'm trying to understand. One, I know you said that the men's assistant coach had to become the women's coach from a standpoint that it had to be a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
But why did it have to be a man? Why couldn't it be a woman? This goes back to the original question from the beginning of this segment, dealing in a quote unquote, ladies and gentlemen, I'm literally, if you're listening to the audio, I'm putting up the quotations, quote unquote, man's world. I'm not saying it's a man's world. Okay. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the perception. Okay. Sue will. I'm saying the perception was, but Sue is confirming that it was. I don't understand why you had to interview if you had that type of success. One, please finish your story and tell me what ended up happening. But the fact that you had to interview kind of annoys me a little bit, and I'm sure annoyed you.
Well, it was rough because I agree with you. I thought, okay, I'm doing a good job and we're being successful. Why bring in a new person who maybe will not keep the continuity going? Well, I was told that this individual got the job because it involved coaching male athletes. So the athletic director's rationale to me on why I did not get the job was that the coach they brought in was a male who had coached male athletes before. I said, okay, has he ever coached women before? No. And the AD blatantly, he was not hiding that at all. I said, so I can't coach men, but I can coach women. And this guy can coach men, but not women. And he gets the job. And that was the rationale. Now, in looking back, I think the head coach at that time was very much a male chauvinist. And so I'm sure he had something to say about it too. But the rationale I was given was I did not get the job because I'd never coached men before. And so ironically, as we worked through the next few years, a lot of the male jumpers, seeing the success that we were having on the women's side, started to come over after their practice was over and watch and ask if they could kind of work with us. And of course, that was rough because I didn't want to get in trouble, if you will, or get on the bad side of my peers with the male coaching staff. So it got to be a little frazzled at times, but the male high jumpers were coming over to work with us. So obviously I could coach men.
It's so funny how I said something in one of my previous podcasts as far as education is concerned. Kids don't know the difference of gender and race and things like that. It's something that's taught as they get older, and then you start to see these segregations. But when you get into college, and it's the reason why they say colleges are so liberal, but it's about experiencing something outside of where you come from. And you see, I've never really interacted with this person. I've never seen a person like this. Wow, I didn't know they had that capability. So that you could have had these students, these male track and fields from small towns where maybe, as you said, the high school program wasn't that great and they didn't see female athletes like this. And then they get to college and they see the female athletes are just or maybe more passionate than they are, more disciplined than they are, and they decide to learn from it. But the older men stuck in their ways. And how was that dynamic with the new coach that took over from the previous coach?
It did not go very well. And mostly because of certain things that were happening off the track. He didn't share a lot of information as far as what was happening with the team or the workouts or things. And so I don't know, because I went into it, I felt I went into it, okay, we've got to work together. Mm-hmm. I had recruited that team. So it was basically athletes I had brought to ASU. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted them to be successful, obviously. And I remember one of the first meetings I had with him, he went down a roster and he was like, well, what about this athlete? we were talking about who is recruiting, and this was in 77. So the 76 Olympics had just happened, and there was a high school hurdler, female high school hurdler on the 76 Olympic team. And so he's like, oh, we got to get her. We got to get her. I said, Coach, she arrives next week. I've already signed her. And so, and the team that I had recruited was awesome. They ended up, again, 3rd and 4th in the nation, winning the national title 4x1, all Americans. So he got a full-fledged team walking in there. Now, whether that was a problem and ego, whatever, I don't know. And this is all, keep in mind, in the late 70s, this is before the safe sports stuff and the women's rights and I'm trying to think, the sexual harassment stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that was going on off the track. Jeez. And so I couldn't deal with that. It just ate me up, basically, because these kids were being used. And so I ended up resigning there in 1981 because by staying there, I was condoning what was happening. And I just couldn't anymore. And so then I went over a kind of joke about midlife crisis at age 30, but it was kind of, so I went over to Long Beach, and again, you talk about a good male coach over there, Long Beach State, and he welcomed me, to help with the team. Now, of course, it was a volunteer, so I had to teach full time again. I worked in a gas station at night.
Jesus.
That's when Wilt was there, and that's when we got involved with Wilt's athletic club. So he helped me some financially, nice. So the transition was pretty smooth actually there.
Wow.
And then come to Texas in 84. So and I'm here.
This is a personal question, and you don't have to answer this. Do you have a bad taste in your mouth with your experience with ASU, or is it a proud? Is it bittersweet?
It's bittersweet only against that individual. Mm-hmm. The athletic director, the women's athletic director, when I resigned and gave her my letter, she's like, can't you get the girls to talk, or can't we do something to get the situation fixed? And I said, I've been trying. The girls won't talk. They're afraid they'll lose their scholarship. I even talked to one of the mothers of a young lady who was on a full ride who was not that good athletically. I mean, she was a nice kid, good student, but not somebody that was full ride material at that time. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, her mother said, we're not going to rock the boat because she's the first one in college. She's graduating in a year. And, I thought, my gosh, you're kind of prostituting your child to get this college scholarship. So it's bittersweet against the situation, not against the school, not against the athletes or, any of that.
Have you kept in touch with any of those athletes from those teams from ASU?
Yes. I still see them, or again through social media. And actually, ironically, last year at the USA Track and Field Convention, this young lady came up to me and said, you don't remember me, do you? And it was one of our long jumpers from that original ASU team. And she's now in Connecticut and coaching and doing a good job there. So it was really fun to see her again.
I love that. I love that. How can parents and coaches of girls and young women who are interested in competitive running best help them succeed?
Well, I think it's to letting the student, making sure the student is this is their passion, not the parent passion, not the coach passion. Unfortunately, we saw many years with the boys where, the dads were reliving their athletic dream or lack of through the kid. Well, we see that sometimes with the girls too, obviously. And so I think is being sure that let the kid do what she wants to do or has passion to do at that time. I think specializing too young has become an issue with, like you mentioned, AAU basketball, there's AAU volleyball. There's some of these kids, their schedule is unreal. Their day-to-day schedule between school and club practice and school practice. And, it's unreal. And I'm afraid that they might not be ready, or they might not want to continue in sport because they're just burned out from it. And that's a concern I have, is looking ahead. When we look back at the stars of today, in track at least, how many of them were stars when they were high school or freshman high school? It's kind of mixed. So I think is to support your kid, definitely. And I don't mean just financially, but, there's a financial commitment, but also to be supportive of her dreams and what she wants to do. And if it might not be what you want her to do, kind of go with the flow and see, or, and to check out the people, the coaches and the group or organization she's working with. Because nowadays, because of the gymnastics fiasco of the last few years with the harassment of the athletes and the abuse of the athletes, there are a lot of safeguards built in now that weren't 5 years ago even, or 10 years ago. But there's still, unfortunately, individuals that are getting away with things that shouldn't be. And they're using their position as an authority, leader, or power position in the team to take advantage of young girls and young guys. It's not just the girl thing. Yeah. And we, through track and field, there's a program through the Olympic Committee actually called Safe Sport. And so we have a program where you can anonymously call in and report someone, and they investigate it. And some of the names that come back as people that are banned are shocking to us, because they're people that have been in the system and worked their way up quite high in the system, and you never knew that they were doing this off the track.
Wow.
Yeah, it's scary.
Wow. Well, that leads me to, you're involved in a coaching summit. Can you tell me a little bit about the event and what attendees can learn, expect to learn from the coaching summit?
Yes, it's called the Gold Medal Coaching Summit, Gold Medal Coaches, and .com. So the goldmedalcoaches.com. It's a free summit this week that's happening. We have 30 different coaches speaking on a variety of events, topics. So all the way from the sprints to the distance, to the jumps, to the throws. And you can pick and choose which ones you want to listen to. If you, again, it's free initially. If you want to get access to the recordings, lifetime access, then you can buy a premium pass for $67. And that gives you all 30 sessions for life in the
reasonable.
cloud. So, it's a good thing. And again, it's coaches that are elite level coaches, and some college coaches, and some top high school coaches. So I tried to pick a variety of individuals. So it's not just Olympic coaches, because a lot of times if you're a high school coach and you listen to what the coach at the University of La La Land says, that might not be something that you can take back to practice with your kids, because of the difference of ability. Right. But if you're talking with another high school coach who's in the same kind of setup that you are, and hear what he or she can develop, you're like, oh, okay, that's a possibility. So I tried to have a variety of levels of speakers too, and it's been pretty successful this week. So we're excited about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, check that out. Also, check out her book. Can you give me I Want to Run? That's right. Put it up there on the screen for all those people that are watching the video podcast. I Want to Run, the Olympic Development Training and Nutritional Guide for Young and Teen Track Runners ages 10 to 18 by Sue Humphrey.
It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Go get it. Lastly, what's next for you in your career? What are you most excited about?
I think now I'm leaning more toward continuing the coach's education part and working with the younger the developing athletes coming up. Again, going back kind of a 360, I started out coaching young kids in a club setting and have been the whole gamut, now kind of back that way. And again, trying to pass on the things that I've learned, and the good and the bad, and help future coaches maybe not make the goofs I did, but learn from things that were successful.
So really, you're talking about solidifying that foundation.
Right.
Because you're attacking it from the coaches, because we talked about how, you know, some of these coaches for the clubs and the schools aren't really good. So you're continuously building that coaching tree, as well as helping the young kids. So you're laying the groundwork for the foundation for the future. I love that.
Right. That's the goal.
Sue, I want to thank you again for joining me today. This has been a very insightful and interesting interview. You're a very insightful and interesting person. Your life experiences, wow. It's pretty incredible. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
No problem. Wow. I told Sue off camera that her story is a story that should be told, and she should start writing her book, and that's a movie. Because from the beginning of her athletic career all the way to her continuous coaching, she's been a part of so much and has interacted with so many people and has been there from the beginning, before Title IX, the beginning of Title IX, and through Title IX. And me and my toxic masculinity was thinking that women are, it's all great now. Women have it. And she's telling me no, like, it's still not where it should be. And I identify with that. Just being a Black man in this country, I identify what she's saying with the struggle that women athletics are still having. They're not at the promised land yet. There's still work to be done. And she's out there doing it. Get her book. The description, the link to her book on Amazon is in the description, as well as the link to her coaching summit is in the description on both the YouTube and wherever you get the audio podcast, it's in the description. I hope I did her life service, that I did a good job representing how important she is, just in American culture and society, and what she's gone through and the interactions she's had. I feel like there's another interview, because there's more details. Like I said, we were off camera talking about some stuff, and I was just like, wow, just some stuff you can't put on there because it's private, but just her career and her life is remarkable. I hope that you got out of this interview what I got out of this interview. And I've had a lot of interviews with people that I'm extremely impressed with, and Sue Humphrey is right up there. She's right up there. This is one of the most impressive people that I've gotten to interview. And I'm very fortunate to have interviewed her. And once again, I thank her. And I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. But until next time, I'm a holla. Thank you for listening to Unsolicited Perspectives with Bruce Anthony. Please subscribe, like, comment, share, and donate. Donations help us keep giving you this free content each and every week. Until next time, Audi 5000. Peace.